Hey guys, if you missed the Google Meets for February 23rd, here's what we did. We're still talking about those Texas power outages. Essential question, or the question you should be able to answer by the end of the day, is what are the different perspectives on this current event? We're going to look at an article from the left, the right, and the center. First, we're going to make some personal connections to help you identify your potential bias, and then we are going to be identifying the perspective from the left as well as the bias from the left on this current event. And the rest of the time will be yours to work on your current event report, which will be due March 1st. And you guys have 37 more days left of the term and only 4 more school days left of midterm. Okay, so a lot of people have some personal connections, whether they have a friend who lives in Texas, a relative, or maybe you lived in Texas yourself. I had a friend who lives in Texas, and it's been interesting. She just moved there like last month, and it's been interesting watching her Facebook post. And I just kind of went through like her Facebook posts. So if you do have a personal connection to this current event, you could use that for your potential bias. This part right here on your current event slide. You're emotionally invested in this current event because you might have a grandparent, a relative, a friend, family member, so on and so forth, that is going through this right now. And of course, if you don't have a personal connection, you could still have a potential bias, like especially being a Minnesotan, somebody who's used to living through cold weather, you might have a potential bias that could influence your view on this current event as well. So yesterday, we filled out the potential bias. We took a short set of notes on Texas's geography, and then you use that podcast to complete questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Today, we're going to work on the green slide, where you're going to read the article from the left, linked right here, the article from the right, linked right here, and the article from the center to take 3 or more bullet points of notes from each article. And you would just put your notes right here in the little box. Okay, so taking notes can sometimes be a challenging thing because it's like, what do I take notes on? Like, what are the important details? Remember, our question is, what now, Texas? Like, what should Texas do about the issue? Here are some things you might want to look for to take notes in that article. You might want to look for causes of that power outage, according to that article. So if you are not a great reader or reading's not your thing, here are some red flags to look for. And this will tell us like the article is going to be talking about a cause around these words. So like cause, blame, issue, problem. If the article mentions any of those like red flag words or anything that kind of mentions like the idea of the cause, you can go ahead and take notes on that. If they mention anything about solutions to the power outage, you can take notes on that. And red flag words for possible solutions could be steps, plan, action, solve, or the word solution. That would be a key indicator that that article is talking about potential solutions, and you should take notes on that. Remember, your goal is to get 3 or more bullet points worth of notes. We are actually going to do one together, so that way you get some free answers and you know how to do the rest by yourself. So on your current events report, go ahead and click on this link for the left, and it'll give you an article from the left's perspective. CNN is very typical left leaning. So we're going to read through this. As we read through this, we're looking for causes, according to this article of the power outage, and possible solutions. Bill Gates, trade-offs in Texas led to deaths. In an interview with CNN's Anderson Cooper, Bill Gates said deaths during Texas's winter freeze were preventable, caused, here we go, red flag word, caused by the state's decision not to weatherize its energy. So on your current event report, according to this article, one of the causes was not weatherizing the state's energy. All right, so we can go ahead and keep reading, looking for potential causes, potential solutions. Gates pushed back on Texas Governor Greg Abbott's claim that frozen wind turbines were to blame for the massive power failure. Gates said America's dependence on renewable energy sources isn't high enough to worry about their stability. The problem was natural gas plants were not weatherized. So they're talking all about how the problem, the thing that caused this natural disaster or this crisis was the fact that natural gas plants were not weatherized, energy wasn't weatherized. That's kind of the same bullet point. So you can add that bullet point if you want to, but it's kind of the same thing. This is not because of renewable dependency, Gates told Cooper. This is natural gas plants, largely, that weren't weatherized. They could have been. It cost money and the trade off was made, but it didn't work out, and it's tragic that it's leading to people dying. He argued that because climate change is the root cause of extreme weather events, green energy must be the future to prevent even worse disasters than the ones unfolding now across the globe. So they mentioned one of our red flag words right here. He argued that because climate change is the root cause, there we go, they're claiming that climate change is the root cause for the extreme weather events happening in Texas. So we can go ahead and add a bullet point. Climate change, extreme weather. All right, we're going to go ahead and keep reading. It's ironic to blame renewables and not realize that we're going to have to be dealing with this unless we get the whole world to reduce emissions, Gates said. He also spoke to Cooper about COVID-19, climate change, and the need for innovation in order to lower carbon emissions. Gates painted a grim picture for what the world will look like without well-funded research and development for green innovations, a cause he has dedicated himself. All right, so they use our red flag word cause right here, but they're kind of using it in a different way. They're not saying like these are different causes. They're saying like this is a cause or an issue to care about. Okay, so this is kind of leaning more towards like a plan in order to solve this issue. Natural ecosystems and the ability to farm in some parts of the world will be destroyed, leading to war and instability, he said. That's why Gates wants this research and development funding to triple to 35 billion. He said many people aren't aware of the emissions generated by manufacturing and farming, and that we need to commit to finding unique approaches to meet market demand for these industries. The deadline for all of this is 2050, Gates said. 2050 is literally the soonest it could get done given the scale and the number of things you have to change, Gates said. So in this whole couple paragraphs here, they don't necessarily use any of the red flag words we identified for like solving a problem, but they're really talking about the idea of like things that should be done to solve this problem. Funding research in order to reduce emissions, green innovations. So we can go ahead and add that for another bullet point. Solution could be funding for research on climate change / green innovations. We'll keep reading, see if there's anything important that we need to add to our notes. The world needs a massive breakthrough, and Gates is looking for one. He said he's faced many dead ends in his investments, which have an 80% failure rate, 20% success rate. When you are limiting yourself to things that have dramatic climate benefits, that would be very impressive, Gates said. I think we will achieve it, but it's very hard. Gates sees the future where 80% of the world's energy is from wind and solar, and the remaining 20% comes from nuclear energy. He uses Texas as an example. Deep freezes reduce the ability to use wind energy, so the state would have to ramp up nuclear energy or draw from storage. On the political front, Gates said his breakthrough energy team is in talks with President Biden's administration and that policy needs as much innovation as technology. COVID-19 can be used as a mechanism to understand how serious climate change is, Gates said. The country was not ready, and CDC expertise has sometimes been ignored. But there is no vaccine for climate change. Climate is very similar, except sadly, with climate, once you get into the problem, the coral reefs dying off, the Arctic ice being gone, you can't reverse those things just by inventing one thing, Gates said. All right, and that is the end of our article. So we got at least 3 bullet points that kind of go a little bit more in detail on the solutions that Bill Gates would like to use. If you'd like to add that to your notes, feel free to, but these 3 bullet points will suffice for your notes. You're going to do the same thing for the right and the center. Go ahead and click on that link, and you're going to look for causes and solutions mentioned in this article. If you need any help with that, feel free to ask. There's also a read aloud video available. So if you do not necessarily enjoy reading, you can follow along in the article as you listen, or you can just straight up listen to me read the article to you. Either way works just fine. Just make sure you have at least 3 bullet points of notes for the left, the right, and the center. If you don't finish this quite today, don't worry. We will continue working on this tomorrow as well. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to pop into your Google Meets during your scheduled block, call or text that Google Voice phone number, or you can always send me an email.